And time now for Media Watch, and I'm joined here by Emma James, who's been looking at that rather foul-mouthed interview that we were talking about just earlier. That certainly got the whole world talking.
It really has. It's one of those stories that when it drops on Twitter, suddenly it is all that anyone is talking about. And certainly when I got home last night, the whole of my Twitter feed was just awash with comments about Anthony Scaramucci, because, of course, it is the new White House communications director who has certainly managed to steal all the headlines and steal a lot of the focus away from other much bigger stories, that has to be said. We were certainly told that he was colourful before he took the post. This interview in the New Yorker really revealed just how colourful he was, or is, I should say. He spoke to Ryan Lizzer on the phone. And according to Mr. Scaramucci, he didn't think it was on the record, but he basically waxed lyrical. I don't know if that's really the right phrase to use, but there we go. It was certainly very revealing. And what he was so outraged about was actually this tweet, which seems fairly innocuous, talking about the fact that Mr. Scaramucci was dining with Donald Trump, Sean Hannity and a former Fox News executive, Bill Shine. In the tweet that follows, it's attributed to a senior White House official that Melania was there too. And of course, Anthony Scaramucci has been talking a great deal about going to war on leaks in the White House. So in this phone call, he threatened to sack his entire department, talked about Reince Priebus, the chief of staff. He clearly thinks that Reince Priebus is in on this operation, saying that this is evidence that his rivals in the West Wing are against him, and are actually leaking to reporters to sort of to put him in a bad light, shall we say. He then said, if you want to leak something, he'll be asked to resign very shortly, talking about Reince Priebus. An amazing comment to make about your colleague. Now, that's all pretty shocking. And also the scale of the division in the White House that this reveals, because, of course, Reince Priebus was the man who brought in Sean Spicer. Sean Spicer, the minute Scaramucci arrived, he said adios, and that was it. He was out. But, of course, it's not all of these amazing revelations that have caused the fuss. It is the language that has been used. Newsrooms around the world have been debating whether or not they should actually publish exactly what he said.
Apparently there were crisis meetings at the New York Times editorial board.
Absolutely. Well, this is the tweet from Clifford Levy, who is the deputy editor at the New York Times. And what he says is, we concluded that it was newsworthy that a top Trump aide used such language. He goes on to say, we didn't want our readers to have to search elsewhere to find out what he said. It is one of those problems. You know, in the days of the internet, you don't just buy one paper, you look everywhere. What is interesting to note, though, although they did publish the whole thing, in subsequent articles, they have tended to go for other little phrases such as tirades, New York attitude, trash talk, explosion of profanity. The Washington Post, too, went in their headline with vulgar tirade, it's worth noting. The UK's Mirror newspaper decided to go with a few asterisks to shield readers from the extent of the vulgarity. And interestingly, Fox News was so concerned about the content of what he said, they actually bleeped out a word that isn't an expletive. So there we go. But yes, it is quite amazing. Obviously, we're governed by different limitations here on television, so I won't be repeating any of the words. But what I can tell you is that he referred to Reince Priebus as an effing paranoid schizophrenic. And that bit, including the alternative word for a rooster, well, let's just say he was trying to say that Steve Bannon is out to serve himself, not the president, unlike, of course, the mooch, who we know is a vision of loyalty. Remember that 2 years ago, he referred to the then candidate for presidency, Donald Trump, as an anti-American political hack who would be president only of the Queens County Bullies Association. So there we go. He is supposedly loyal to Donald Trump, but how long that will last for, we will wait and see. Now, he's tweeted again to say, I made a mistake in trusting a reporter. It won't happen again. However, it's understood from everybody that this was never supposed to be off the record. He has also apologised for his colourful language and says he won't be using that again. But Looking at some of the other reactions to this, well, this Twitter user pointing out that it wasn't asked to be off the record, and he says Ryan Lizza welcomes Mooch to the big leagues because, of course, now he really does have to watch everything he says because he is the president's spokesperson. Michael Smerconish asks, how is it that that interview isn't an immediate fireable offence? I think we've gone into the kind of territory where nothing matters anymore. What is very interesting to note, though, is that Breitbart, of course, founded by Steve Bannon, the chief strategist who, among others, was criticised by Scaramucci in that interview, they have very much showed their colours. They are very much in Bannon's corner. And I think they're trying to play some psychological games with the president, because what they say in this article is, move over, President Donald Trump, you are yesterday's news. It seems like this is now the Anthony Scaramucci show. Well, if you remember when the Saturday Night Live started talking about Steve Bannon being the real power behind the throne, suddenly Steve Bannon started to disappear from view. So a lot of people are wondering if the same thing could happen here.
Especially given the Mooch has made such a splash in his first few days in the job. Thanks for that, Emma James. And that's it for this edition. Do stay with us here in France 24, as there will be more news and headlines coming up at the top of the hour.